Форма мы, в принципе.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Ukrainian Media Center on reforms, and every day we deliver our briefing, and we every day say that reforms does not mean just resolutions and decisions. It's everyday work, everyday change in practices, in business practices, in behavior and in values. Recently, we discussed that the deregulation measures aimed at improving practices in seaports was carried out in right direction, and they were aimed at increasing investment attractiveness of our seaports. And it ensured the raise in amount of processed cargoes. And today we discuss how the bad practices existing in seaports, how it makes obstacles to investment attractiveness. The Minister of Infrastructure planned to participate in this briefing, but unfortunately he did not succeed in this, and it's my pleasure to give the floor to Borys Kozyr, Deputy Chairman of the Verkhovna Rada Committee on Transportation. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Today's press conference is devoted to a crucial problem which have been persisting in our sector for quite a long period of time. I was approached by the representatives of the sector who provided information in 2 letters to the Security Service of Ukraine, to Minister of Infrastructure Vasyl, and to Prime Minister Yatsenyuk. I won't repeat everything which is written in that informational letters, but I should mention the major facts that Security Service of Ukraine blames the Ministry of Infrastructure and the Cabinet of Ministers, that they provided, invested our companies with part of state equipment and state facilities, and that private-public partnership is inefficient. They believe that the rent services on that rent services agreement for that property was not concluded properly, and they blame the minister in corruption. And my lawyer, colleague lawyer, will comment about the eligibility of that contract, but I will speak on as an expert in this sector. I used to work in many positions in the shipbuilding sector in Mykolaiv, and I witnessed the successful development of the Mykolaiv seaport. And today in the room we have Mr. Kapatsina, who actually carried out the first reform in Mykolaiv port. I observed how Bunga terminal, how Mekong terminal, how every terminal has appeared and grown and currently observe the growth and development of two other new terminals. This became possible due to the lease agreements which were concluded with by the state with private companies 10 years ago. Now we need to do the same with Odessa port, and this will bring new technical processes. This will allow new cargo handling procedures, and this would allow to increase the amounts of cargo processed, and thus to get more profit. About investor companies which leased the state properties. The investor companies are not afraid of any inspections and checks. They are subject to high-level audits every year, and they are not afraid of the inspections and checks. But the letters like SBU sent to the Prime Minister about corruption and about necessary checks and inspections in the investor companies, we simply create unfavorable conditions for the investors, and thus instead of creating favorable conditions for investor, we do opposite sin. We create obstacles for them. That's why I've written a letter to Mr. Ritsak, head of the SBU, to carry out a special unbiased investigation of this case. If this won't happen, I am able to create a special investigation group or committee in the parliament with the objective to investigate this case, and I will appeal to local authorities in Kherson and Mykolaiv to protect our port businesses. I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Vasyl Kapatsina, Honorary President of the Mykolaiv seaport, to explain this more about the situation.
Thank you. Really, we chose European way of development. We dream that we'll have European standards. During the last 10 years, Odessa port and Mykolaiv port work a lot. For us to follow those standards, we develop an investment climate. At the base of that, we have commercialization of seaports and the road of PPP. We have only one way, is to lease state property, port powers. A lot of conversations about concession, but nothing is done in terms of legislation to support that. What makes me worried? This private-public partnership based on the lease of private property became said that on the base of which in Odessa and in Mykolaiv there was $1 million, in Mykolaiv 500,000 million, and we were able to move to private-public partnership on the base of lease, and we have a very democratic liberal legislation from the point of view of lease of state property. It meets European standards. Investments came because of that form of cooperation, of that partnership. If to speak about Mykolaiv port, we have 3 international transnational companies, Bunge, Noble Agri, ArcelorMittal, and companies which allowed in the last 10 years from 4 million tons, as Borys mentioned, to move to cargo processing up to 12 million in a year. Economic effect from the point of view of the state went up geometrically, in geometric progression, and the state is interested in taxes and all the payments to the budget. What makes me worried, and our partners and port operators in Mykolaiv, and I believe that we have our colleagues from Odessa that will express their view. The legal system of Ukraine, or police system of Ukraine, it can study any issue, including related to business of any participant. And that's quite normal, but what makes me worried, that they created a group. All Ukraine, all the internet is filled with that news. And in several days, an absolutely wrong accusal of $1 billion losses of the state. What do we do? How can we call it? Seaport, any seaport of Ukraine, that is a subject of international maritime law, the subject of communication, maritime communication. It's not just Ukrainian business. I don't mention even that it's a strategic enterprise. Nowhere in the world, if there is any problem in a port or something, maybe there's a corruption or something, or everything should be done according to the laws and constitution, and there should be investigation, there should be conclusions, and then in the court, and only after the decision of a court, maybe you could report to people about the results. Now, I repeat what makes me worried, and my colleagues also, that the constitution is violated and the laws are elementary abused, and there are problems, there are issues or questions, and there are criminal suits, and there is investigation, pre-trial, and there is a court. But all of that is absent. And seaports, which made such a breakthrough as to bring in foreign investments, they are accused, they're named as criminals and heroes of this black PR. And all the world is watching us, and international maritime organizations, and they have blacklists, blacklist of ships, ports, maritime agents and expeditors, and we do everything for Odessa, Mykolaiv, and other ports to be on those blacklist. As a professional, I can tell you that will turn the face away, not only with transit flows, but it will make Ukrainian export like steel and grain not good for export, and that's a threat to Ukrainian economy. I would like to finish representatives of Ukrainian media. Ask the leadership of Ukrainian law enforcement bodies to work according to the constitution and legislation. If there is a problem, study, and we are ready to provide assistance, to provide explanations. And there are a lot of professionals in Ukraine who are able to do economic analysis and who can learn the history of this issue. And after that, then you can blame us in something, or you can put responsibility on someone. Once again, I would like to say that the branch on which we are sitting, we are just cutting it off. With this campaign, we harm economically, we harm economy of our state. Thank you. Thank you, Vasyl. As far as I understand, the situation includes foreign investments that were used with the support of EBRD. We have Mark Magaletsky, and could you comment this situation? Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Yes, port industry in Ukraine is one of the most dynamically developing and because of objective reasons, it's quite an attractive for investments. And we see in many ports of Ukraine, they mentioned Mykolaiv and Odessa, and we really see a very good interest from the point of view of big international companies and Ukrainian companies' interest to invest. And we see results of those invest. Ukraine terminals, container, oil, etc. We are financing structures, one of such Dublin, Kiev, and Odessa port, and we organize, implement a big project of grain terminal, and there's a chief of the project. She will give you details on the project. We provide long-term money to funds to realize it. During the last 2 days in press and media, there is information and with reference to security service of Ukraine about checks, and I collected the public information and like press releases of SBU. In fact, press releases don't provide a lot of information about the issue. They say that there are checks. They found some serious abuses. And a lot of, they mention losses, big losses, but they don't mention what happened in fact, why it happened, why such losses, and the most important, what's after. What does it lead us to? Where to does it lead us? And it seems like there are no results, but they create a very serious negative background, which has a negative influence on the work of all the companies, on financial organizations that finance them and provide funds. For example, our company and our goal is to clarify what happened, and we would like also for such checks and results of such checks to be announced after the work is over, and if there are conclusions. And if there is evidence collected according to the procedures. Thank you. And it was Mark Maglansky, representative of EBRD, and they found projects of PPP and seaports. I would like to invite Honorary, who represents a company that implements a project, one of the projects which is a subject of checks, as I understand.
Good afternoon. Thank you, the organizers, for this opportunity to speak to the mass media and to communicate some information. I'm Elena Aleva. I'm Deputy Director of Brooklyn Kiev Company. We are in rent contract with the state in Odessa seaport for more than 20 years. We have this contract, and those 20 years has proved the reliability of our partnership and the win-win cooperation for the state and for the company. When we just started our relations, the property which was subject of this contract, it was considerably imperfect, and it was not a good property to deliver investor services. That's why the decision was made by the company to develop these facilities in order to allow big ships to enter the seaport and allow to process big cargoes. And we started from creating new freight stock facilities. We created new facilities for processing of huge amounts of sugar. We created warehouses. Later, we created one of the first grain terminals in the seaports in Ukraine. Then we we built up the container terminal, and currently we are building up the new project which is reloading and processing of grains. The total value of this project is at the level of $103 million US dollars, and we have taken almost 50 million of loan for the implementation of it. And for the current marketing season, we managed to process more than 57 tons of grains, and we created new jobs, we created new tax payments. We paid more than 212 million hryvnia. Our company have paid 212 million hryvnia for the last year. For the 6 months of this year, we have paid taxes amounting to 250 million hryvnia, and without close cooperation with Odessa seaport, implementation of this project won't be possible. During the last period of time, we experienced huge unfriendly pressure on stevedore businesses on behalf of the security service of Ukraine. The previous speakers described the actions of SBU. Similar way of action is taken by the prosecutor's office. They come to us with the search orders, and they make interruptions into our work, and this creates negative image of our company. Today we have been cooperating with PDM Louis Dreyfus. Louis Dreyfus is our partner in the EBRD project. We cooperate with CMA, CGM, and Myers companies. These are very key, famous freight companies, and I would like to draw your attention to the fact that the law enforcement agencies would rather act within the legal field instead of making harm to our images, make some legal conclusion, come to some legal conclusions, and produce some legal opinion about our activities first, and later make official statements and press releases on their websites. I would like to give the floor to Alexander Kivyak. You have several minutes before questions. I'm Kivyak Alexander. I'm a lawyer. I'm chairman of the LLC. We have many clients among invested their companies in Mykolaiv, Odessa, and Delichevsky.
Because in general, you know about the problem, because of my profession I represent, I will mention just main facts. The reason for some unhappiness or anger you heard here about representatives of different companies, it's a fact of publications with the reference to official site of SBU about checks in Odessa port and also finding as a result the loss of the state and for the sum of more than 1 billion hryvnia, and also they found a smuggling line through leasing enterprises. As an example, there was a fact of arresting near Odessa put a container with smuggled goods which left at the port without any document. And as a lawyer can tell you, we respect the right of law enforcement bodies to check state enterprises, and as any state has the right to know what is happening, but we are not against such checks. The reason of unhappiness is in one, and there is a blemish on business reputation of many stewardship companies, and we have reason to believe that that was done by mistake or on purpose, and too quickly. If you want, we can remember the thesis which you quite know about the innocence presumption. There is no conclusion, no suspicion, no evidence, and no decision of a court. But there is a report about successes, and SBU reported on their website. I respect officers of SBU. I understand that they have a lot of important things to do, but self-PI is not the main task of that organization. And about the second fact, about the announced sum of losses, when we started to investigate from where they took that sum, everything is explained quite easy, because SBU received a document of Control Revision Department on checking Odessa Port in 2011, where they may state the investigation to provide to lease under the condition of self-services of Kachka, the port would receive 900 million, etc. So the point of accusation is, if the port didn't give it a full lease, if it was a loan, that would be profit. So it means it's a loss. It's a completely wrong approach, because all what stewards earned, they don't count that we made investments, stewards, and that is quite a wrong approach. And the next fact, and the next fact, there is a PR more important for someone than a real effort to learn what is happening. The case with the container that was arrested at the gate, that case really happened, but in March this year, that case was quite known. And the fact of finding that it happened because of internal security service of the port. So that was not now, and not as a result of the work of the Commission, which means that the goal of those who distributed that news and who blemished the reputation, business reputation, it's a doubtful fact. Because of that, and because of limited time, I would like to say that all the contracts we had, those contracts were signed since 1994 until 2005. And the leasing contracts are signed with the participation of State Property Fund and also at the agreement of Infrastructure Ministry. So they were checked for legitimacy. In the eyes of the investor, especially and who's in Hamburg Orleans in 10 years after the contract to find out that Ukrainian government doubts the treaty, the contract they used for 10-15 years, and that brings her to the point. Should we continue the business in that country? And it's about the government. They wanted to attract investors, but at the same time, they create quite tough or untolerable conditions for those investors who, in this difficult time, stay in this country and who express their patriotism, and they continue working here and they keep their business. And in my opinion, the attitude to them should be quite respectful. Thank you. Colleagues, is there any question? We have very short time. If you can very, very briefly. How it can influence on the export of Ukrainian grain? Could you give some forecasts? Will it have influence on the export of Ukrainian grain abroad? And are there requests of international traders, or will something be more expensive? Of course, I mentioned that situation will bring to higher freight fees, and the price will be higher of the destination port. And it means that there are world prices for grain. Then they will pay less, they will buy cheaper, they will pay less for Ukrainian grain. It will take me several days to give a calculation, but it will have very negative consequences if we speak about grain. First of all, for producers, because by chain it will bring to a smaller price. It's clear, you don't need to be a professional for that. And it will be this Monday or the next Monday. I will speak about real trends. It's not someone that invented. This is how international grain market works. It's about any exported good. In general, it just undermines investment climate and in those ports, because my colleagues explained that very easily. I beg your pardon. We have a very important briefing about OSCE mission, so I have to finish. We have a lounge where you can continue and you can ask questions, and the colleagues will be